we've always kind of, pushed the technological edge.
When we created the Toilet Save Christmas, there were some dramatic changes in production values.
Toy was a pretty big step for us.
Toilet Save Christmas was significantly more ambitious than the films we had done before it.
Back then we had, there was only like 8 of us.
I was the 9th employee.
And there were still only, 10 of us, the same number that we had just done. I think Dave and the Giant Pickle was before that, right?
Right.
Which was
Yep,
a much
just
simpler,
before that, yep.
much simpler show. So we kind of killed ourselves to get it done on time.
I remember heat and no sleep.
I walked into the executive offices of a screw machine factory, which were the offices that where Big Idea was, and smelled the cutting oil that was in the air.
The guy who had built the factory had actually spent way too much on his front offices for scale to the factory itself, so he went out of business. He went bankrupt.
I think it was the shag carpeting and the,
yes, I mean he built himself his own big wood paneled office, very 60s, with lime green linoleum tile all over the place, and then his office had shag carpeting, real wood paneling, his own bathroom, personal bathroom, and so he went out of business because he spent too much.
Don't forget about the drapes.
On his office. Oh,
the drapes.
Drapes to die for.
Yep,
It was all very kind of, Austin Powers.
And we actually packed FedEx packages, in the office, sent them to people. People would open them up and say, "That smells like your office." It's like,
so we were shipping this.
Ship the smell.
Yes, shipping the smell across the country. Jim and Jerry.
Ich bin ein Gord.
The landlords wanted to change the air conditioning unit on the roof of the aforementioned screw manufacturing plant. And so, and this is in September, summer was ending, so they walk in the door in September, go to the woman who was working our front desk at that time and say, "Would now be a good time to shut down the air handling for the year?" And she looked around.
And it was a cool day on that particular day.
And it was a cool day.
Yeah.
And said, "I think so." and then they turned around and walked out. We never heard of this conversation. It was never relayed to us. 2 days later, the air conditioning turns off. Then we get a heat wave. So we've got a heat wave in September heading into October. We've got 10 people working on computers trying to finish a show, and it's 85, 88 degrees, in the office.
But that's where green linoleum comes in handy, because it stays quite cool, so you can actually cool off on the linoleum if you lay down flat.
Sooner or later, we developed a infestation of mice.
We had fly paper set up. I don't know if that was to catch mice or not.
It dawned on me that this company was definitely unusual when we were in the last week or 2 of the show.
And of course, it's a Christmas show, so you can't ship it late. There's no shippy lady on a Christmas show, because no one, for Groundhog's Day, people do not buy Christmas videos. So we had to get it done on time. We ended up, working around the clock.
The reason there was this night shift was because the computers, we only had 3 or 4 computers that we could actually work on.
They just wouldn't leave the office. They just had to get the show finished.
I have a very distinct memory of stepping over a sleeping animator in a hallway to get to the edit room, so we could try to finish the show. So there were just people lying on, pieces of foam rubber on the floor, trying to sleep while we were getting it done.
We called it the Noni foam, remember?
That's right.
My mom's name is Noni, or Nona, Noni for short, and she had all these old foam things that she, used to use under her mattress or whatever, and I, inherited them somehow, and brought them to work, and,
Yes.
Everybody laid on the Noni foam.
I was still working full-time at a church as a director of music, so I would work my full day at my other job, come home, and at that point my studio was in a spare room in our house. It didn't even have a door. It was just kind of off of our dining room. So I had it half filled with music equipment. So 10 o'clock at night, or whenever Phil was done with his work at the office, he would come over. So we had a lot of very late nights into the morning trying to get the score done. And then he'd, have to get a few hours sleep and go back and go to his regular office.
At this one point, there was an announcement made, and I've been there for 28 hours now, and this announcement comes over our phone intercom. The final shot will be rendered in an hour. And I look at my clock and it's like midnight and I'm thinking, an hour, gee, that's going to be 1 a.m. So I get on the train and the stop before downtown goes right by our offices. And so I'm looking at the window, I look outside and I notice as we go by the offices, every one of the employees' cars are still there. Look at my watch, it's 8:45.
It was a harrowing time. I remember just people laid out on the floor the very last day, including Phil. We're all just like crashing.
The tape left, got down to Dallas, handed the tape to the duplicator. It went off and they started making copies of The Toy That Saved Christmas. Meanwhile, the rest of us just kind of collapsed. Everybody went home. But that night, about midnight, Phil Vischer, Bob the Tomato, wakes up with these terrible chest pains. He thinks he's having a heart attack. Lisa Vischer, his wife, Junior Asparagus, takes him to the emergency hospital. It takes him about 3 hours to figure out, well, no, it's not a heart attack, but actually a bacteria, because he's so depleted, his body is attacking his heart. And they send him home and put him in bed. He has to stay in bed for about a month. And then, now that he's rested up, we're thrilled he's alive. We know that's just terrific. But as soon as you get well, could you write the next script?
The Toy That Saved Christmas was a watershed film for us because we had never attempted anything limbid before. You know, we just had vegetables.
In The Toy That Saved Christmas, the penguins, which I didn't appreciate at the time as a real dramatic production improvement, but they had arms and legs. I mean, they had wings and legs, featherless wings, albeit.
So the animators really started getting into, okay, give us some arms and legs. You know, anything with arms and legs, which led to, okay, you want it? Here it comes. It's Buzzsaw Louie, a jointed toy, and then ultimately, you know, the penguins.
Tom Danon at one point had the scene where Louie first steps out of the warehouse and slips and tumbles down the stairs into the snowball. And he was just laboring over this, you know, how does this have to look and everything? And he finally, he saw a Jackie Chan movie, and he saw one point where Jackie's just like flying through the air, but his arms are windmilling and his legs are kicking, and it was just this, the perfect action fall. So that's where Tom got this inspiration to give Louie the Jackie Chan fall. So that's what it became from then on. This is Jackie Chan.
I didn't realize how difficult that was because of our software that we were using. I mean, actually animating appendages really slows down the process. It's why we use vegetables.
And it was actually on this show, The Toy That Saved Christmas, that one of our vegetables, for the first time, acted with his shoulders.
That's right.
And
That's
vegetables don't have shoulders, but Mr. Nezer shrugs. You know, as Ron Smith was the animator.
It's just the scene where, again, the townspeople confront Nezer, and he's kind of, you know, I don't know, what are you talking about? I don't know what you're doing. And I just put this little chuckle thing in there, and because he was more costumed than most of the other characters. He had his little shirt and tie and his pants. But just because I had that to kind of make visible the edges of his relatively spherical shape going up and down, it was this groundbreaking moment of vegetable thespianism.
And I just remember watching that. It's like, what? Play that again. How did you make him shrug? He doesn't have shoulders.
Quite some acclaim I gained with that one.
So it was on this show that, you know, the animators really started pushing the animation to a level beyond what I had conceived.
When Nezer has them all tied up on the sled at the end before he sends them to their doom, the ability of the computer to animate, like do secondary animation, if you move this character, having the rope move with him was impossible. We couldn't do that. So if you watch the show and you're like, that rope's not really around them that tight, they could get out of there. Just please remember that we were having to finagle that rope after, you know, after moving every character. It's, good thing they're tied down and they can't move too much, but even then it was still pretty big chore.
Big Idea Productions presents the VeggieTales Christmas Spectacular.
We were excited that we were finally going to get one of our shows on TV. So we did a deal with PAX that had just started. It's like, well, this will be fun. Let's see if we can, a new network, see if we can get a new audience to come to a new network to watch Veggies on Christmas.
Larry,
Yeah, Bob?
this is network television.
I know.
Do you know how hard it was to get a network to turn over an hour of airtime to a bunch of vegetables?
Well, I love Christmas music, so when we had a chance to do a Christmas show, I thought that was going to be a lot of fun, which it was. But we didn't use a lot of traditional Christmas music, so I had a lot of fun trying to sneak it in where I could. For example, on the silly song, "Oh Santa, da 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 da," at the end there, through the whole verse, you hear jingle bells underneath there. At the very end of that song, you hear just a line of Joy to the World. Bum, bum, ba-dum, bum, 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 bum.
With a lot of the silly songs, it's kind of a conglomeration of a few different experiences for me.
Oh, Santa, I can't wait for you to come. I just can't wait for you to come, and I've got cookies.
I think Oh Santa, obviously I wanted it to, have a Christmas theme. I had just seen, my wife and I went and saw the play The Kiss of the Spider-Woman with Cheetah Rivera. And so we had just seen that, and there was a song in that kind of caught my attention. And it wasn't really the melody of the song, it was more of the style of the song. There were two singers kind of in a duet, and then their lines would overlap, and they wouldn't be the same lines. So, they'd be, kind of singing over each other like that in a really kind of a cool fashion. So I thought, oh, that'd be really neat to do something like that.
We could do that, too.
We could do that,
We
yeah.
can sing at the same time, too.
Yes. We thought that, and then, so I came up with this concept of, Larry, having these cookies ready for Santa, and then, different people would come and take his cookies besides Santa.
In the score, it's fun to sneak in some Christmas songs here and there also, but some of them aren't as familiar. For example, there's this one. See if you know this one. Which is, Willie, take your little drum, da-da-dum-bum-bum. But I like to sneak that in where there's some real action sequences. Bum, 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 bum. So I change up the rhythm and kind of hide it in there.
The messages are almost as much for parents as they are for kids. Like, hey, let's just look at how stupid this is. That we're all running around, gotta have it, gotta have it, gotta have it, and it's stuff that no one needs at all. So that was the genesis of Buzzsaw Louie. The little, like, what if an action figure, like a Cabbage Patch Kid, stood up and said, hey, this is ridiculous, this isn't what Christmas is about. You don't need me. I'm just a little stuffed sock, and that's the storyline.
I think Big Idea Productions is the only company that makes children's programming that handles faith issues in such a relevant, real way, with great humor and enjoyment. So it's a joy to work with. But originally it was like everybody just kind of had their fingers crossed. They prayed in the morning, Lord, we sure hope we don't lose anything today, because we don't have time to back it up, nor do we have the funds to pay for backup.
And they all lived happily ever after. The end.